This weekend, a lot going on. I sampled like a little bit of everything this weekend. I watched some DDT, I watched some Noah, I watched some New Japan, I watched a lot of UFC, and feel like that this is the way to go. Like you're not going. When I was doing my update today and just like calculating in my head, I'm like, how many hours of WWE and AEW is this week coming up? And I didn't even include Ring of Honor. I don't even include that as like AEW proper. And 19 hours of WWE and AEW.
That's half a work week.
And I'm probably gonna watch all of this week too.
Yeah.
Really, the skippable one in there is probably Rampage. So, okay, you can shave off an hour of those 19, but it's like you're getting a 4-hour pay-per-view Sunday, a 3-hour NXT show on Saturday, Collision, SmackDown, Dynamite, Raw, NXT. And this is not even like a crazy week, I would say. This is like a relatively normal week. And if we're going into a year where we are going to have WWE pay-per-views every month and AEW pay-per-views every month, and between an NXT PLE and a Tuesday night special, like there will be one big NXT show per month, essentially. And then you throw in 4 Ring of Honor shows a month or a year, unless those are all just snowballed into this AEW. It's not a shock to me that there's less engagement when it comes to New Japan or to like people that maybe followed Lucha for a time that don't keep up with it as much anymore, or just it is such an impossible task to imagine that your average fan is going to keep up with this, much less find more wrestling. You really have to get to an audience that is stating to themselves, I am going to watch Impact 1000 because it's so special. And we saw Impact, like if ever there was an Impact show that was going to do a number this year, it was Impact 1000, and it came and went, and it was just the normal number. It's not an indictment of quality anymore. Like the quality it's at a good level. Like I don't think there's too many consistent pro wrestling promotions that are putting out like, no one's putting out god awful television or have awful creative, but it's, man, the big two are just the vast majority of fans. That's it. That's all. It's a chore to keep up with this. And I think over time, like you're going to whittle away that audience that is just trying to keep up with this. Cause I think it's going to be, instead of just, I'm cutting down an hour here at AEW, I'm just going to not watch Collision. And then I think that becomes a slippery slope to, I'm not going to buy every pay-per-view. And I do feel like we're in the midst of people are trying to consume all of this, but it is going to whittle away, in my opinion, because it's a daunting amount. And most people are not going to push themselves to cover this. That's not a leisure activity.
Do you watch every Jays game?
No, I don't. But there is, at the same time, plenty of people that do.
Yeah, and those people are just as crazy as the people that choose to keep up with all of this, in my opinion. I mean, if you're going to die hard, then you're going to. But the rest of us are going to bandwagon jump when it's time for the playoffs. And that's going to be the case when it comes to professional wrestling. A lot of wrestling fans are only going to dip in for your Royal Rumbles or WrestleManias. Or in the case of AEW, anytime there's something hot that happens. It's sort of inevitable when it comes to, this market where the more you create, the more money you make, right? In the end, people are going to have to pick and choose what they truly want to watch, and the rest of us will cherry pick. And if you're not an AEW or a WWE, you're going to have to think that much harder to present a different product than what the others are promoting.
I think it's just tough when your message to your audience, even if you're not flat out stating it, but it's implied, hey, you don't have to follow all of this. Like it's not like you can just watch.
What's the alternative? Don't do as much.
I understand the need for it, but I just feel like what is the benefit if there is a burnout to your audience that cannot sustain this?
I guess
if Collision ultimately doesn't bounce back when college football is over, and it's an audience that just gets used to, they have other things. Like, what benefit is it for Collision to be this to not make it on Saturday nights?
The benefit to who?
I mean, I'm just stating, like, that is one where here you are piling on hours
Yeah.
And in a vacuum, I think Collision's a really entertaining show. But does that become a casualty to people? And then when you're looking at, like, if that show fails, like, your broadcaster is going to, I think, have less confidence. And here we have one flagship show, and we
If
have
it
not
fails,
been
then they
able.
won't pay for it.
Well, and then that
But if
becomes
they're
the
going to
problem.
pay, well, then they're just back to where they were a year ago, aren't they? The fact is, they have a broadcaster that's willing to pay for it, and if they're willing to pay for it, then they're going to create it.
What do you take from the SmackDown deal? That here is something that, I mean, it produces numbers, and it got like a somewhat like reasonable increase, but not a crazy one. And it also, like, that is also covering like these NBC specials on top of SmackDown every year. And for all the numbers that SmackDown has been doing, and on this huge surge over this last year, I mean, they did not get the level that many people thought they would. And is that like a cooling? Do you read that as anything about just an attitude towards pro wrestling, or just like, how do you read that deal?
I read it as, whatever WWE was asking for this sort of 1.4 increase was not worth Fox did not determine that to be worth, the amount of money that they were asked for. I mean, in terms of performance, it's hard for me to necessarily gauge, a dollar amount that might be equal to whatever AEW was performing. Sorry, SmackDown was performing in terms of ratings. But whatever it was, Fox decided it wasn't worthwhile, whereas USA felt it was very worthwhile, to command that price. Like, would the solution have been if there were 2 less hours of professional wrestling, produced by the WWE each week? Would the result have been more beneficial for the WWE and at the end of all of this? I don't know if that's necessarily the answer.
No, I think SmackDown is caught in this issue where this is post Charter Disney, post like all of this uncertainty in cable, and it appeared to be that, there needs to be more of a pushback towards these rights fees going up. And this was one that I think did feel it. It's not the end of the sports rights bubble, but it is something indicative of where SmackDown has performed versus what the expectations were.
Mm-hmm.
And this would have been at least something that it was not a home run for them, but it wasn't a strikeout either. Like, you have to kind of view it in the middle there. And then that becomes, I think Raw is ultimately going to tell the tale. Will this be a successful will this be a successful negotiation period for their rights, or is this going to be a disappointing one? And the fact that they have announced SmackDown for USA and not Raw, I mean, does that tell you that NBC Universal, this is as much as they're putting on the table to commit to pro wrestling? It's $287 million, because Raw obviously is going to want a lot more than that if they're coming in at 265 and are going to want a significant increase as well.
It's a big question. Yeah. And one that I hear we might not necessarily find out until next year for the Raw deal.
It's hard to say where a deal would come. Like, timing wise, it does sound like it could be a while, and for their benefit, like, there could be some magical mystery player that comes in with something. But I'd also look at it for WWE side, like this. They had to have known, like, announcing this SmackDown deal. Like, I'm sure NBC Universal wanted to like lock this away, but it's not like they were holding off for SmackDown for a better offer to come their way. Like, they must have felt this is the best offer we're going to get. That is the combat. And maybe we had to, like, theoretically, if they were in talks with Amazon where they could have reached the expectation level dollar wise, but are we really confident at the end of the day putting these 2 hours onto Amazon now? Do we compromise on cost with reach being what we want instead? And it's not like cable is like this guarantee either, but they might feel it's still the primary method for a lot of people. And in 5 years, maybe it's not, but today it is.
Yeah. Money talks in the end, and if they get a big enough offer to take Raw exclusive to a streamer, they might at some point consider it. But there's something to be said about just, being able to reach as big of an audience as possible. And when you're on broadcast or when you're on cable, you could still have an online presence. You could still have a streaming presence with the next day. But you're losing a lot on maybe some of the fun of, I guess, all these Nielsen ratings and, being a live product on TV.